The city is black except for the light of cell phone screens and the flash of an occasional bonfire. Citizens push forward, inhaling smoke and chanting a litany of demands that resembles a will for the future. That raw instant a crowd, discovering its voice, is the easiest, most direct description of how protests change history. Who are the players? Regular folk, usually the ones who had felt invisible previously. Workers, students, mothers, the jobless, the individuals who would not take a silently brutal status quo lying down. What do they have? Not merely bodies in the street, but narratives-proof photographs that compel a discussion. At what times do these occasions arise? Often after a lengthy buildup of complaints, economic meltdown, police brutality, ecological neglect, electoral manipulation, but occasionally one event speed up all the rest overnight. Where do they occur? Public arenas, streets, squares, university, entrances, plazas. And how do they really rewrite the script of politics and society? By shifting narratives. A protest reshapes who is legitimate, who represents the people, and what constitutes acceptable action. It brings moral pressure that institutions find difficult to disregard. The laws don't drop from the sky, they are bent, reinterpreted, or repealed because individuals made it politically expensive to protect the old arrangements. The machinery is ugly. Viral video clips, sympathetic reporters, divides among elites, global attention, and the intransigent determination of those on the ground. Demonstrations are not magic. They work when they expand the circle of sympathy and when shattered power nodes yield space. And they fail when isolated, violent, without plan, or suffocated by overwhelming repression. But even failures can echo. The memory of resistance becomes a blueprint for the next movement. That's why a single night of mass action can look small on paper and seismic years later. To be aware of change, begin with motives and organization. Who organizes demonstrations? Formal groups, grassroots, networks, labor unions, and leaderless collectives all do. What they are demanding varies from narrow policy fixes to systemic overhauls. When the demand is specific and reachable, you tend to see quicker successes, a fired officer prosecuted, a law changed. When the demand is systemic, the process is longer. Transforming institutions, rewriting public norms, and changing the balance of elite coalitions. Where organization is most important is in maintaining energy after the first week. A protest that can translate anger into institutions, neighborhood committees, legal aid, political platforms has endurance. How they mobilize varies based on resources. Social media reduces coordination costs, charismatic leaders assist in galvanizing local cadres, offer logistics, medical assistance, and legal aid. But technology is not sufficient on its own. The movements that last marry online reach with offline discipline. Timing can also matter. Protests timed around elections, high-profile trials, or economic crises can intensify pressure. Conversely, protests during periods of intense repression face much greater hurdles. Crucially, movements are rarely homogeneous. They contain moderates who push negotiation and radicals who push disruption. The interaction between these tendencies shapes tactics and outcomes, and mastering that internal dynamic often determines whether a protest becomes a policy change or merely a headline. Protests reframe the debate, and that in itself is a powerful thing. Who hears? Other citizens, opposition, politicians, business leaders, judges, foreign governments. What is reeled in first is public opinion. A picture or witness can mobilize a marginal complaint into a national issue. When it happens, the political price of ignoring the demand increases. Protests make indifference costly. Where this is enacted is in institutions that were once self-indulgent, police forces, parliaments, companies that suddenly find themselves at reputational risk, market pressure, and electoral wrath. Institutions' reaction is telling. Some reform reluctantly because it is less expensive than repression. Others double down and attempt to smother dissent. Repression may muzzle a movement in the short term, but it also toughens accounts. Victims or martyrs. Repression is evidence the previous order is corrupt. Protests also build new civic infrastructure. Monitoring, NGOs, new media, a generation of politically astute activists. Economically, protests can pressure policy changes, wage reforms, redistribution policies, subsidies as governments try to mollify discontent. Globally, protests draw attention. Sanctions, travel bans, or changes to foreign aid can come next. Briefly, protests turn abstract concepts, dignity, justice, legitimacy, into quantifiable political pressure. That process is seldom direct. It happens through negotiation, confrontation, and the painstaking process of organizing. When movements succeed, they redefine rules for what governs everyday life. When they fail, they continue to instruct upcoming organizers how to be more intelligent, quicker, and more robust. Not every movement becomes a turning point. Who determines if a protest succeeds? Historians, journalists, and participants themselves argue outcomes for decades. What holds value for lasting change is a mix of circumstances. Widespread involvement across social classes, understandable demands that can be converted into policy, and splits among the powers that be. When elites fracture, some defect to the demonstrators, others to the regime, the balance shifts. Where those fractures happen is usually informative. When the military will not shoot at civilians, when corporate leaders stop giving money to right-wing politicians, or when bureaucrats quietly refuse to carry out punitive orders. How protests generate elite defections is complicated. Moral suasion, fear of losing economics, care about international reputation, or plain pragmatism about remaining on the side of the victors. Successful protests assemble coalitions with sympathetic insiders who have doors that can be opened. They also dictate framing through facts and compassionate narratives to make repression expensive. Another frequently overlooked ingredient is flexibility. Protest movements that have the ability to interpret changing political currents and adapt strategies from streets to ballots, from sit-ins to lawsuits survive longer. Last timing with events outside the control of governments is also critical. Global financial crises, wars, or pandemics can amplify grievances or give governments a cover to suppress demands. The moral is blunt. Success is not necessarily momentum, it's strategy, alliances, timing, and the ability to harness protest energy into lasting institutions or policies. The enduring legacy of demonstrations appears in law, culture, and memory. Who profits from such changes? Not necessarily the most vocal, sometimes future generations who receive new rights, better protections, or a different public discourse. What is last is not necessarily the short-term policy, but a relocated baseline, what citizens expect of governments, and what governments expect of citizens. When constitutions are redone, when oppressive legislation is abolished, or when new watchdog organizations emerge, those are quantifiable legacies. Where cultural change shows up is less obvious. New gender, race, or environmental responsibility norms become commonplace in schools, workplaces, and media. How movements achieve these advances often demands follow-through, political engagement, building institutions, legal action, and education campaigns. And even when gains are only partial, protests reorder legitimacy. Leaders once and for all secure who become vulnerable to forced retirement, political parties who become open to overhaul whole policy debates, who become subject to reinterpretation. The last piece is memory. Protests leave behind narratives that travel in songs, textbooks, and family history. This memory is a political capital for future mobilization and a moral scoreboard on which future governments are scored. Protests are therefore both a technique and a memory device. They generate immediate pressure and long-term stories that refashion what a society believes is possible. If you take one practical lesson, it's this: protests do make a difference because they alter what people believe is normal and what powers think is possible. They are not a solitary weapon with predicted results, but a component of a bigger political environment. Who appears what they expect when they protest, where they assemble, and how they mobilize together decide if a protest turns into a footnote or a pivot point. The reality is less bombastic than the rhetoric. Protests do not create immediate utopias. Rather, they redistribute power slowly, occasionally suddenly, and invariably unevenly. Study them closely, and you'll see the modest mechanics of viral video. A sympathetic judge is split in elite circles that over time amount to seismic shifts. That is how protests, through patience, courage, and strategy, change history forever.